Hi Suresh, hi Venk.
I'm starting the session. Okay.
Oh yes, sir.
Recording start कर देंगे. Vice President Mihir Bhai Sheth, speakers for the session, Mr. Sandip Shah, CA Suresh Swami, in absentia Ms. Ketaki Mehta, convener of International Taxation Committee Rutvik Sanghvi, and coordinator of this meeting Parag Kotak. A very good evening to all virtually assembled participants. The Honorable Finance Minister late Mr. Arun Jaitley, during the presentation of the Union Budget 15-16, announced the establishment of Gujarat International Financial Tax City, which we call GIFT City, in Gujarat as India's first international financial services center. This was with the aim of harnessing and retaining the finest financial minds in India. Over the past 7 years, several measures have been undertaken to incentivize overseas financial institutions and overseas branches and subsidiaries of Indian financial institutions to move their operations to Indian shores. IFSC, though technically located on Indian soil, it is considered an offshore jurisdiction for foreign exchange purposes, allowing investors to invest in businesses located within the IFSC without having to comply with India's foreign exchange regime. Special tax incentives have also been provided to units located within the IFSC to further incentivize offshore investment and bring the IFSC at GIFT City on par with IFSCs which are globally situated. Further positive steps were taken during previous year to achieve real tax neutrality by providing exemptions on distribution of income along with existing exemptions on current income. This is a benchmark that IFSCs are judged against, and GIFT City is progressing towards that state in a systematic manner over the past 7 years. There are further relaxations during current year's finance bill on exempting certain other income accruing to non-residents from transactions with entities located in GIFT City. This lecture meeting is being addressed by experienced faculties dealing with GIFT City regulations and having in-depth understanding of the functioning of the same. This will enable participants to understand the opportunities which are there to exploit. This session will set the ball rolling for you all to go to the drawing board and design strategies for providing services to international diaspora of financial and technological stakeholders operating from GIFT City. For this year, our motto is ESG, empowering, scaling, and globalizing. This lecture meeting serves the purpose of providing insights to the members and participants for scaling up of services offered and also becoming globally competent by providing services to international clients operating out of GIFT City. The niche services which we chartered accountants can consider to offer in GIFT City as financial and tax advisors are in the areas of FEMA consultancy, international taxation advisory, fintech advisory, and many more such services in the field of finance, taxation, and accountancy. Coming to BCS, it is the oldest voluntary professional body of chartered accountants established in the year 1948. I request you all to visit our website and surf through the resources and events. You all may also follow BCS on social media, where we have more than 50,000 followers. Recently, BCS LinkedIn follower base has crossed 15,000 mark, and there are more than 20,000 YouTube viewers. You all should subscribe to the prized publication BCA Journal, which keeps one abreast with the latest developments in the regulatory regimes of India. This will enable you all to appreciate the quality of events and resources which shall be at your disposal if you enroll as BCS members. We are an 8,000 strong family and have ambitions to reach magical figure of 10,000 which can be achieved with support from learning enthusiasts like you all. To conclude, I am sure you all will have insights to the opportunities waiting at GIFT City to be grabbed. I now request Parag Kotak to introduce the speakers for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhay. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce such an eclectic mix of speakers today. I'll start off by introducing Mr. Sandip Shah, who is the head of IFSC department at Gujarat International Finance Tech City Company Limited, also known as GIFT City. GIFT City is developing an international financial services hub in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. Mr. Shah has over 11 years of professional experience in project development, policy matters, international financial services regulations, and securities market. Mr. Sandip Shah is a Bachelor of Commerce and Master of Business Administration with specialization in international finance. He has also done Diploma in Foreign Exchange and Risk Management and Company Secretary Intermediate from the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. He has been involved from the beginning of International Financial Services Center at GIFT City. He has been leading various initiatives with IFSC Authority, Ministry of Finance, RBI, SEBI, and ORDI to develop and promote IFSC globally. He is also instrumental in preparing key regulatory proposals for IFSC institutions. Mr. Shah works closely with IFSC Authority for developing new lines of business such as aircraft leasing, international bullion exchange, offshore fund management, amongst others. Currently, he is the head of IFSC department at GIFT City and has been instrumental in bringing domestic and international financial institutions in GIFT City. Mr. Shah has played key role for signing cooperation for GIFT City with Bloomberg, Refinitiv, and educational institutes like Gujarat National Law University, Nirma University, ICFI Business School, and NIFM. Mr. Shah has worked extensively in various committees formed by Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Civil Aviation in the areas of international financial services. Currently, he is a member of steering committee set up by Ministry of Finance for promoting export of financial services in India. He is also visiting faculty at Institute of Commerce, Nirma University. He has previously worked with HSBC in the securities market vertical and NSDL at Mumbai between 2010 to 2015. He has in his earlier assignment worked for operationalizing India's first insurance repository. I'll now move on to introducing Ms. Ketaki Mehta, who is a solicitor and a law undergraduate, and she specializes in joint venture, M&A, private equity, venture capital, and angel investments, and regularly advises multinationals and private equity clients across industry sectors on the buy side as well as the sell side on all types of M&A and cross-border investment transactions, including mergers, amalgamation, asset and business sale purchase, financial investments, joint ventures, and strategic buyouts of listed and unlisted companies. She has also advised on corporate lending transactions, project finance, acquisition finance, and structured finance transactions. She also advises on general corporate matters and transaction structuring involving various banking and finance laws, securities laws, exchange control laws, particularly in relation to inbound and outbound debt and non-debt investments and sector-specific laws. She is currently leading the firm's GIFT City IFSC practice on ground while advising a varied bouquet of clients across practice areas and across sectors. She is also part of the firm's financial regulatory services practice for mainland India laws and an integral part of the firm's Ahmedabad regional practice. She is a member of the Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa, as well as the Bombay Incorporated Law Society. Next, we have Mr. Suresh Swami, who is a fellow chartered accountant from the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, as well as a cost and works accountant of India. He is a partner at PwC and is based out of GIFT City. He has over 24 years of experience in the field of direct taxation. He has spoken at various national and international seminars and has also authored a book on presumptive taxation for non-residents. With that, I'll request Mr. Sandip Shah to please take it forward. Thank you once again for being here with us.
Thank you, Parag, and thank you for organizing this seminar today. I'm sure this is going to be very useful for the chartered accountants to look at the new business opportunities in the areas of international financial services. And as rightly mentioned, this is the right opportunity for some of you to actually explore the international market where a lot of international financial services activities are happening, basically, where India is importing such financial services, and IFSC at GIFT City can play a very important role to bring back such businesses in India through the IFSC. I'll share the copy of presentation and we'll go through the slides basically. In today's discussion, so we have experts from the tax. Suresh will more discuss from the taxation perspective, and we have also Ketaki from the regulatory side. She's a lawyer. But the idea is to give you overall opportunities and the the businesses which are happening today in the financial services sector mainly. Uh, I'll divide this discussion into two parts mainly. The first part would cover, because I'm sure many of you must be hearing about GIFT City and reading about GIFT City. Uh, the first part I will cover in terms of where we are, what we do, and the kind of infrastructure that GIFT City has created to cater to some of the business requirements of the financial services players. And in the second part, we'll briefly discuss about the new and emerging opportunities in the financial services domain, and how as a chartered accountant professional you can play a role to not only from the advising or consulting to the companies, but also from the employment perspective, how the center can be helpful to all the professionals. Post this, my friends Suresh and Ketaki, they will run through some of the regulatory and tax aspects for the each business segments, and we'll be happy to take up questions post our presentation. So GIFT City basically is located in near Ahmedabad International and Domestic Airport. It is only 20 minutes drive from the airport. It's located much closer to the Gandhinagar, which is the state capital. The idea is to develop the integrated smart city, and because it's a greenfield smart city project, we could actually work on some of the very unique infrastructure facilities that we have created today. The project started way back in 2007-8 when it was conceptualized, and on ground work started in 2012. So between 2012 to 15, GIFT City worked on creating state-of-the-art infrastructure for various companies to operate here. And 2015 was the year when Government of India notified International Financial Services Center at GIFT City. And that's how many of these financial services business and activities have started happening from this zone. From the overall master plan perspective, GIFT City is basically divided into two parts. The red boundary which you see in the map is the special economic zone. So an entire GIFT City is around 886 acres, and out of which around 261 acre is the special economic zone, and which is notified as International Financial Services Center. The remaining area of the city is domestic zone, so which is as good as having business in any of the domestic center of the country. However, even in the domestic side, Government of Gujarat provides very attractive incentives under the IT/ITES policy, which was launched a week back, where the IT companies or even financial technology companies, they can set up their back office operations and avail some of those incentives announced in the policy. As I was mentioning, the idea is to create integrated smart city development, which means it does not have only commercial development, it also caters to the residential and social facilities. The objective is to create walk to work concept. So where people working here can stay here, that's the idea. And that's how you see all the yellow dots which you see on the right side. These are all residential development coming up in the city. And from the social infrastructure perspective, there is already an international school operating here. There is a state-of-the-art business club. There is a 5-star hotel operating here. And just 3 kilometers from GIFT City, there is also a knowledge corridor developed by Government of Gujarat, which houses universities or the institutes like Gujarat National Law University, Pandit Dindayal Petroleum University. IIT Gandhinagar is just 3 kilometers from here. Dhirubhai Ambani IT College. So very well-known and recognized universities in various domains are located in and around GIFT City. I'll talk about the infrastructure, and this is very important, and we would be happy to host all of you whenever time permits to the GIFT City and have a look at some of those infrastructure that we have created. So we have a water treatment plant at the city level where people can drink water at the tap level. There is a centralized cooling plant, which means the cooling is provided through a chilled water and it is converted into the air. It's a 10,000 ton capacity plant. So these are the actual photographs of the plants today, fully functional in the GIFT City. All the buildings are obtaining the cooling through this plant, and which is a 30% energy efficient. The left side bottom, which you see, is the underground utility tunnel, which is 7 by 7 meter. wide tunnel below the ground. And this is very unique infrastructure today in the city, where even a vehicle can go inside and do the maintenance activity. It carries all the pipelines and the cable connection, which means there will not be any land digging for any maintenance activity. Even a vehicle can go and do the maintenance work. So that's how it is planned, and the around more than 4 kilometers of tunnel is fully functional today. Similarly, right side bottom, which you see, is the automated waste collection and segregation plant, which is developed by Sweden-based Anvek company, which means there will not be any manual intervention for collecting waste and segregation of waste. The plant has it's a fully automated, where the entire process from segregation collection to segregation happens fully automatically. So I mean, just wanted to highlight that the financial institutions and the occupants in GIFT City will have a different experience when they come and operate from GIFT City. There is a centralized command control center also, which controls and monitors the entire functions of the city. And it does not only include the utilities, but also takes care of the buildings and the public movements in the city, and it is captured in this location. In terms of the overall infrastructure developments in the domestic side, there has been various commercial development by the various developers. Initially, first two towers were created, GIFT 1 and GIFT 2, and these are the tallest tower today in Gujarat, with ground plus 28 floor capacity. And similarly, other developers like Prestige Group and World Trade Center has come up with their commercial buildings. In the international zones specifically, these are the three fully functional commercial buildings, and similar number of buildings are under development at various stages. So we're expecting many more such buildings to come up in the international zones specifically. As I was mentioning, in the social facility size, the Chamnabai Nasi School is fully functional from nursery to 12th standard. There is a club, and the residentials are coming up, from the developers like Shobha from the Bangalore. They are creating the residentials in the city. Now, I think this was more from the infrastructure perspective and the overall ecosystem which is coming up basically to cater to the various businesses in the city. I'll now take a couple of slides to give you a perspective, the objective of establishing the International Financial Services Center in India, and how it has emerged today, and what are the activities which are happening in this particular zone, and probably where as a chartered accountant you can play a very important role to be a part of this entire journey. We have been working for this International Financial Services Center project for long, and initially in 2015, when Government of India announced setting up of the International Financial Services Center, the RBI, SEBI, and IRDA, the existing regulators in India, were regulating this zone. So which means the RBI, SEBI, and IRDA, they provided the guidelines basically to the banking, insurance, and capital market activities to operate from this zone. And from the broader objective perspective, this is a very important statement made by Honorable Prime Minister during his speech in January 2017. And some of the points that he mentioned, that Indian firms should compete on equal footing with the offshore financial centers, and the regulations that we provide basically for various activities in GIFT City should be comparable with the other financial centers. The objective was also to be a price setter of some of the largest traded instruments, which means India, I'm sure you all know, we are a leader in many of this. Like as a gold, we are one of the largest consumer today globally. Similarly, for other sectors also, India plays very important role in terms of the global trades. However, for such instruments or the products, India is not the price setter, and the idea is through GIFT IFSC, how can we become a price setter by providing the required regulation and the tax framework. And with that objective, the regulator and GIFT City is working towards, and a lot of progress has already been made. And look at to some of the numbers which will give you a perspective how the business is going from this center. The idea is also to make this center as hub for raising the capital and debt. And the banks operating here and the exchanges are ensuring that GIFT IFSC becomes the hub for raising the low cost capital and debt from the overseas markets. As I mentioned, when after the 2015, when Government of India notified the International Financial Services Center at GIFT City, subsequently Government of India also announced various tax incentives for businesses to operate here. Suresh will cover more in detail about the tax incentives announced for the GIFT City, but from a broader level perspective, the entities enjoy 10 years of income tax holiday. So there is no tax for 10 years and flexibility to select any 10 consecutive years. So I think, and some of the other tax incentives made this GIFT City at par with some of the other leading jurisdictions. In 2017, Ministry of Corporate Affairs also provided exemption under the Companies Act. So there are 59 clauses of the Companies Act which do not apply to the companies set up in GIFT City, IFSC, and which provides more of a ease of operations basically. So I think that has also helped companies to be at par with some of the other leading jurisdictions. As I mentioned initially, the IFSC Center started with the banking, insurance, and the capital market activities. Subsequently, in 2020, Government of India came out with IFSC authority, and that was the objective to ensure that unified approach is provided basically for businesses to operate here. And the regulator is headquartered in GIFT City today, is fully functional for last 1 year, and as a IFSC authority, they have been issuing various new regulations, and they are permitting various new business activities to operate from this zone. As we speak today, there are already 2 international exchanges operating in GIFT City, which operate 22 hours a day. The exchanges are set up by both BSC and NSE. They have created subsidiaries companies in GIFT City, and they have products like commodity derivatives, currency derivatives, equity derivatives, debts, securities are listed on the exchanges. So these are more or less international exchanges at par with other leading global exchanges. There are more than 19 IBUs licensed in GIFT City, and these are like offshore banking units. So earlier, the Indian banks used to set up their overseas branches and to serve the Indian markets. And these services include like providing foreign currency loans to the overseas subsidiaries, buyer's credit, trade finance, or providing ECBs to the Indian markets. So now more or less this entire offshore banking activities have started happening from the IFSC, and we are happy to share that the banking asset size has grown to now $22 billion, which used to be zero in 2015 basically. So I think India has started getting back those businesses from the other which was India related business. Along with the exchanges, there are more than 50 plus capital market intermediaries as well, which provide trading platform to the foreign investors to trade on the IFSC exchange platform. One of the recent circular also permits now these brokers to even trade on the other global securities. So sitting in GIFT City, you can actually trade various other global markets. This has been enabled now, and we are seeing huge attraction from some of the large brokers who have set up their overseas desk with offshore trading desk in other centers, now looking to set up within IFSC. There are opportunities in the insurance segments as well, where insurance companies in GIFT City can provide dollar-denominated insurance to the overseas subsidiaries of Indian companies or any other overseas entities. And the insurance intermediaries have also set up their shop here. The ancillary services, I think, will play a very important role, and we'll cover more in detail during the presentation, where even a chartered accountancy firm can also look at setting up their operations under this framework and can serve to the various business opportunities in GIFT City. We have also connected with Singapore International Arbitration Center, where they've set up their office in GIFT City, and where the companies can actually use SISC for their dispute resolution. So the seat will remain of the Singapore, and the hearing can happen in GIFT City. That's the idea, and so this will provide more like a confidence to the foreign investors to participate in the GIFT City. overall, apart from the opportunities in the financial services from banking, insurance, and capital market, we are also working on developing new lines of businesses, which include fintech is one of the major areas that we are targeting, where the sandbox regulatory framework has already been issued by the regulator, where the fintech startup can actually be a part of the sandbox framework and develop a product which can be catered to the overseas market. The global in-house center, this is something very important, where the back office or the high-end financial services operations of the global financial services firm can be provided through the IFSC under this GIC framework, where the subsidiary of such financial services arm can serve to the overseas subsidiaries and branches. Bank of America is the first one which has set up their global in-house center today in GIFT City and serving their overseas operations. We are also developing aircraft leasing and finance. For each of these business, we'll cover more in detail in terms of what are the opportunities and how, as a chartered accountant firm, you can serve to some of these segments to your existing clients. International Boolean exchange is coming up. The exchange has already been set up by the existing exchanges and depositories in India, and the relevant regulations have already been issued. So we are expecting this Boolean exchange to be functional very soon. However, the various notifications have already permitted, even a qualified jewelers to buy the gold or import the gold through the International Boolean Exchange. And this has opened up new opportunities for the bullion traders today. The sixth one is very important for the non-financial services companies as well, because we understand many large corporates in India have set up their holding company globally. And now with this global corporate treasury operations, even such holding companies can look at setting up their treasury operations in the IFSC. And similar to aircraft leasing, we are also now working on ship leasing framework. So these are some of the new business opportunities which we are working right now, and we are getting a lot of attraction from many of these activities. From the overall now, so apart from the regulations and the tax incentives, what we feel the ease of operations that GIFT City provides and the cost of advantage that it has, it actually attracts the large global financial institutions to locate their business in GIFT City. Additionally, the physical infrastructure and the standard of living, kind of walk to work concept that we are promoting would add to the overall ecosystem that we are trying to develop. These are some of the names of the institutions which have been licensed recently and in various business segment, and we are seeing a lot of attraction mainly from the alternative investment fund business, where many offshore funds have set up and established their presence here. And the idea is to invest in not only to the Indian domestic market, but such funds will also invest in any other overseas markets. So I think with this background and on the overall GIFT City structure, I'll hand it over back to Ketaki, who will take you through some of the regulatory aspects of various businesses. And then Suresh will take you through the tax framework of the. Thank you everyone, and look forward to interacting post this presentation. Ketaki, over to you.
Thank you, Sandip, and thanks everyone for hearing us. It's a pleasure to speak before learned chartered accountants. I think we can probably just tell you what we know of the system, but you guys are quite talented and smart to figure where you all will have your role to play. So without much ado, I'll just take you through a couple of these slides that we've come up with. This is a breakup of what the slides look like.
Ketaki, before you start, I'm sorry for interrupting, but Meg, is it possible to hide one of those other slides and maximize this?
Sure.
Let me try this. Meanwhile, Ketaki, you may continue, and we'll try to make it full screen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ketaki, you may continue. I'm just trying to see the options.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so we'll just go to the next slide. Uh, to put it in a nutshell, what is the IFSC? It is an International Financial Service Center of India, right? While we had Mumbai as the commercial capital of the country, there was still a lot of these benefits which we weren't able to tap in, similar to how, let's say, you have these financial hubs in Singapore or London or New York, or now even the Dubai and ADGMs. So with the whole concept of developing a global financial hub, the IFSC was conceptualized. Um, the IFSC is as part of the SEZ, it still benefits to all of those tax benefits, etc., available to the SEZ, but it also has additional set of its own benefits, be it tax or otherwise. Specifically, what happens is all entities set up in IFSC are considered as non-resident from a foreign exchange control perspective, right? Also, you have all transactions here are required to be done in foreign currency, freely convertible foreign currency. So you don't have to be bothered about the whole exchange risk or hedging related issues. Apart from that, the Gujarat government has also permitted a lot of stamp duty benefits. There are special exemptions made under the Companies Act from, for IFSC entities. While initially the RBI, SEBI, IRDA, and PFRDA had set up their own little framework for IFSC, in 2020, the IFSCA authority was set up, and with that came in the unified regulator, the International Financial Service Center Authority, which has the power of RBI, SEBI, IRDA, and PFRDA, and rightly so, because of the whole constitution the way it is, wherein you have ex officios of all these regulators of our country being a key part of the board of IFSCA. The way IFSCA comes up with its regulations, it kind of reviews it on a regular basis. It puts it up for public comments and takes into those comments in consideration before actually notifying the law. If we can move to the next slide, please. So what are the key regulatory frameworks that apply to an IFSC entity? It is the SEZ Act, because it's part of the SEZ. Therefore, you will still need to get your registrations, etc., under the SEZ Act. The FEMA provisions apply. The IFSCA Act and all regulations and guidelines and framework framed under that apply. And the Companies Act, the LLP, the partnership, to the extent, the nature of the entity that is being set up applies. We'll move to the next one. We'll very briefly take you through, I think these are the business activities permitted in IFSC. I think most of this Sandip has already covered. So you have all the types of banks coming in here. All of these banks set up as branch. Today in mainland India, you want to set up a foreign bank, you have the option of setting up as a branch or as a WOS, which is a wholly owned subsidiary. But except for two banks, all other foreign banks are actually set up as a branch because of the various other requirements, and including, let's say, the capital requirements. Most banks prefer to set up as a branch. So IFSC actually provides that as an opportunity to banks. So you also have the ability to set up NBFCs as financing company, finance units. You have the insurance and reinsurance and intermediaries as well. You have funds which are set up. You have various capital market entities, be it the exchanges, the depositories, the depository participants, the custody services, the brokers, the share transfer agents, all the host of entities on the capital market side set up here. The emerging sectors include aircraft leasing, ship leasing, today most of the aircraft leasing really happens from the specialized niche hubs like, let's say, Ireland or Japan or Hong Kong. And again, this is a capex intensive sector. So it will take time for it to boom in India, but with the kind of UDAN initiatives and the kind of population we have and the increasing reliance on aircraft aviation as a sector, having this aircraft leasing hub within the country, and yet offshore, kind of will just give us an edge to save a lot of currency, elsewhere, and growing our country as a hub. Apart from this, there's this emerging Fintech Hub. Most of the fintech innovators we see in places like Singapore, etc., have some or the other Indian roots, right? So with developing a fintech hub in IFSC, we are giving a platform to the resident Indians here to actually get on level with the global players and showcase their talent and develop the business within India. We are also coming up with a TradeX platform, which is similar to what RBI has. But the key difference here will be where you may be actually able to do even offshore as opposed to at least one entity being onshore. So in terms of the trade, finance, etc., this will really give it a great boom. We are also looking at regional treasury centers, global treasury centers, with providing the global market access in GIFT. There will be more use case even for the larger Indian conglomerates to actually set up in GIFT within the same time jurisdiction to have access to global markets and manage their treasury from within the IFSC. A couple of other services that are also coming up is the global in-house centers, the huge back offices that we've seen in booming up from, let's say, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, to some extent in Pune, Mumbai, Gurgaon. We beyond a point, basis the time jurisdiction, etc., a lot of entities started having these closer to their jurisdictions as well. However, with the employment laws changing in countries like US, where it's become even more expensive, I think most of the entities are looking at seeing a global financial, global back office setup in countries in the APAC region, where they are able to tap better talent at better price and available 24/7. So, and of course, the ancillary services, which includes all of us as lawyers, accountants, tax guys, auditors, and a few others which could also fall under this. We move to the next slide. I'll quickly take you through how the setup related process works in IFSC. Basically, you need to first have a space identification done. Apply to GIFT SEZ because you are still within the SEZ, remember, to get a provisional letter of allotment. You make an application in Form F to the SEZ authorities. It's a small center, so to say. It's global, but there are, for people who visited here, it's all a very close-knit community, and you are able to actually access the regulators very easily, and they're very approachable. So you make these applications to the SEZ authorities. You make an application to the IFSC for requisite license. You get the SEZ letter of allotment. Apart from all of this, of course, you need to set up your entity in whatever nature that is, whether it's a unit, whether it's a unit meaning branch, or it's a company or an LLP or partnership, depending on the area of practice or permitted activity that you have and what is permitted under IFSC laws for that. and you ensure the minimum capitalization norms, etc., are fulfilled. You ensure your regular PAN, TAN, GST, IN, etc., are obtained and in place. You need to register your necessary property related documents. Again, for some of the entities, when they get their SEZ approvals, they get specific exemptions from the SEZ authority on stamp duty related aspects, depending on the activity that they are engaged in. So with this host of activities, you are then set to start your business. And of course, I think one thing I missed to mention is your home country regulator approval, right? So this is a financial services hub, remember? So apart from the ancillary services, everything else is financial services. And financial services in most countries are regulated, right? So you will need to get your home country regulator approval. And this is also key from the perspective that IFSCA, as opposed to any other regulator, plays one more hat here, which is that of a developer, right? Compared to those hubs where, with time, the business and everything emerged and evolved. This is a situation where business is already evolved across, and you are trying to now build up business here while there are established centers across. Hence, the requirement for the regulator to also be a facilitator to ensure ease of doing business, and hence their requirement to be a light touch regulator, and therefore require that, if you have your home country regulator approvals, then at least every compliance that you need to do with your home country regulator, you also ensure is reported to IFSCA from time to time. We'll move to the next slide. Yeah, I think this is a gist of IFSCA as a unified regulator. Less scope of regulatory arbitrage, increased consistency, certainty, stability. They develop and regulate financial services, financial products. They are vested with the powers of RBI, SEBI, IRDA, PFRDA, and in the last 18 months, we've seen the maximum traction happen after IFSCA has set up. A lot of entities have now set up, and those who had set up before have started actively getting into operations here. We'll move to the next slide, please. So these are just a few of, so obviously the laws here are intensive, and I mean, not very rigorous, but varied sectors and therefore varied laws. With the kind of time we have, we'll not touch upon each of the laws, but what we can do is we'll just try and cover the typical products which are common in the jurisdiction. So ECBs, of course, is most common. Your masala bonds, Indian rupee loans are also under ECB, are common. Trade financing, the buyer supplier credit is common. Aircraft and ship leasing is something that is booming up. But I think before the leasing business starts, what is key is for development of the aircraft and ship financing business, because you will need to have money from this jurisdiction to buy assets which are this capex heavy, and then be permitted to lease it out, right? So these are again, in the developmental mode. With LIBOR slowly easing out, the SOFR linked financing products are coming in. The other vanilla products also are kind of traded here by banks. On the capital market side, I think Sandip's already given the kind of numbers that the exchange is kind of rolling here on dollar denominated products. But the debt bonds, the NDFs, the non-deliverable forwards, the ESG bonds, typically also called the green bonds, are now getting listed here. The custody and trustee services are developing well. There are varied products, and we will come to this a little later, which are also kind of developing here on an experimental basis, which is kind of also helpful for most of these sector players. On the financing company, financing units, you have a few set of permitted activities as core activities, as non-core activities, depending on what activities you're picking up. your capital requirement, your entity setup, etc., would be dependent. Finance companies here are not allowed to take deposits. We could move to the next slide. Yeah, on the insurance side, you have all of the general health insurance, reinsurance, the web aggregator, distribution services, import factoring, all of these included. Ancillary services, obviously, we discussed. So we move to the next one. Yeah, the few things which, as I said, depending on your activities, which also get evaluated is your net worth requirement, your capital requirement, i.e. your liquidity assurance from the parent. Your parent needs to give some form of an undertaking to ensure that, there is, if there is requirement for any funding required, then the parent would do it. One thing to note from a banking perspective also, that there is no bank of last resort here. So you don't have a DICGC kind of cover. You need to ensure compliance, regular compliance with your home country regulator. Most products, as I said, are in the financial services are regulated, except now a few which are emerging, like the cryptos or the digital lending platform, which also now are looking at being regulated. So you have to ensure your home country regulator compliance, whether it's India or whether you're from any other part of the world, right? Because it's a global financial hub. You could come in globally. Whoever your home country regulator, you have to ensure compliance with that. Compliance with every applicable law in the IFSC on financial services undertaken by the entity in the IFSC. So let's say, for example, if you are a bank and you are undertaking factoring, you're undertaking Boolean, etc. So whatever are the framework for each of these, you need to then be compliant with each of those specific frameworks as well. We move to the next slide. So this is kind of the core regulatory requirements in terms of the products that are the products and the permitted activities in IFSC. I think these are just a few upcoming opportunities. We are looking at retail, HNI focused products, wealth management products, and LRS focused products, which most banks are looking at coming in. But I think because of a few LRS related issues, these are even though conceptualized, still somewhere on hold. But we should be looking at these coming in anytime soon. On the capital market side, again, SPAC transactions are what we are looking at happening in the US. Singapore also coming up with their SPAC regulations sometime soon now, about 3 months back. The likes of Baiju's also looking at doing SPAC transactions to list themselves. So hopefully this will be a market where we'll have something like this. Climate and sustainable financing is something that is really being promoted. You are looking at green bonds, ESG bonds coming in here. You are also looking at other green products. Say, for example, the green deposits, right? These are all basically to boost the environmental friendly requirements, which most entities also follow as part of their CSR activities. So you'll have the opportunity to do these bonds here. There also seems to be some 1% waiver, interest waiver available in relation to green bonds. And then the Boolean depository receipts. So now with the latest, even the qualified jewelers being permitted to access the International Bullion Exchange, which is soon to be launched. I think it's likely that most of the bullion coming into the country would probably be routed through the IIBX in IFSC. Aircraft ship leasing we already discussed. The TradeX platform we discussed. Fintech opportunities and sorry, I think fintech opportunities we'll discuss in a little bit. The GICs and treasury centers we discussed. So we could just move to the next slide. So there is a specific sandbox framework by the IFSC, which kind of promotes you to come up with any of those products which may not be tested on Indian soils, which may probably not even be regulated. But if you are able to satisfy the criteria set out in the framework, and you're able to set out how this benefits for the whole ecosystem to have on the financial services or financial product side. You have the ability to try and test them in the IFSCA regulated sandbox, where for an agreed period which the IFSCA will permit to you, you will be able to do test transactions, and if it turns out to be viable at the end of the sandbox period, there could be regulations around it, and you can then just officially launch this. So while various products are taking place currently in the sandbox, obviously none of them have been in a situation where the sandbox period has been completed. But let's say the TradeX platforms are happening in the sandbox. We've read of the crypto ETFs in the news. There's also the US stocks being available through the sandbox mechanism. So this is the new experiment. This is the gateway for India to do all kind of experiments relating to BFSI products and services. We move to the next one. In furtherance of this whole initiative to ensure that you come up with more products which are competitive and comparative to global markets, the IFSCA along with the government and GIFT City have also come up with various hackathons, including for bank tech, insure tech, cap tech. We are also looking for reg tech, soup tech to come in. And there is a specific fintech scheme that has now been launched, and you could fall under any of those 5 parameters to fall under the fintech scheme, and therefore have the ability to get incentives and initiate. We move to the next slide. Okay, so lastly, I think I'll just cover 3 of the key budget announcements in relation to IFSC. So year on year, since the time IFSC was announced, every budget we see some little announcement for IFSC. And this time around, I think the ones were quite key. One is the dispute resolution mechanism, where the government is looking at setting up an international arbitration center in the IFSC. I think the key parts of this is that, for most people setting up, they would want to know that if anything went sideways, where will we land? With the kind of delays and the Vodafone and type of cases, people in the global community want to see that there is more certainty to their dispute resolution requirements if they were to arise in the IFSC, and these should be comparable again to global standards. So this is a step towards giving them that comfort in saying that we are coming up with an international arbitration center specific to the IFSC, which will be set up with bespoke rules for the arbitration center here. Of course, there will have to be some kind of land or infrastructure allocated for a center like this. We can imagine that there should be like a designated bench in the Gujarat High Court or some other way where appeal provisions should be available, or interim reliefs, etc., should be available for awards passed under the international arbitration rules. Also, we are expecting, apart from the actual formulation of the rules, there could also be amendments to the current provisions of Indian law, let's say the Indian Arbitration Conciliation Act 96, the Civil Procedure Code, the SEZ Act, to basically ensure that awards passed under this are considered as international awards in order to ensure that their enforceability is eased. We imagine for this to be a long-term initiative, but something coming up sure and well. I think the other one is setting up of foreign universities with specific focus on offering courses in the financial management, fintech, the STEM streams, and looking at developing talent in the financial services and technology side. This will help offering courses more to, the mid-level to executive courses, and upskilling them, and, also therefore providing more talented resource for people coming into the IFSC. We see great opportunities for the education sector in foreign as well as Indian waters. We don't expect any of the domestic education laws which restrict for foreign universities to set up to affect the foreign universities setting up within the IFSC. I think a few other things which we can imagine is that these courses will be offered again in freely convertible currencies. So that again becomes benefit from a foreign university perspective as well. We expect again for this to be a long-term initiative, because there will be some form of infrastructure development as well. We expect that there could probably be a committee set up with experts on it and coming up with their report and draft regulations, and ultimately looking for final regulations to come in. Lastly, again, the climate finance and climate and sustainable finance that we spoke about before. So the budget announcement is again looking at incentivizing these products to be floated in the GIFT City. I think the latest we've seen is even the draft AIF regulations kind of giving an opportunity for the AIFs to undertake green finance. This will also, as we said, help those companies whose CSR activities include environmental protection, etc., to participate in this. We expect for this to be a medium-term implementation item with, parameters set out on what should constitute green finance, what should constitute green investment, maybe a dedicated platform, and also probably a few more incentives to give boost to something which is also with a cause. I think with this, I would pass this to my colleague Suresh Swami to take over on the tax and other aspects.
Thank you, Ketaki. Firstly, good evening to everyone. I must say I'm very excited to present on this platform. I spent about 45-50 years in Mumbai, and 25 years of my career I have spent in Mumbai. I am a member of Bombay Chartered Accountant Society, and I have, during my early days as a chartered accountant, I have attended a number of programs, and I have been a big beneficiary of the programs conducted by the institute, by the association. But now I'm so happy that I'm back here now, at least as it's a payback time, and I'm hoping that the participants here will be able to benefit from whatever I present in the next few minutes. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you like. To the extent possible, we will try and respond to them. If we are not able to answer some of the questions, and I don't claim that we are the experts here, but yes, we will certainly try and answer all the questions to the extent we can, right? And to the extent we cannot, we will certainly come back to you with email and try and respond to some of your questions. With that, maybe I'll just dive into the tax framework. There is a specific tax regime. So go to the next slide, please. So as far as IFSC is concerned and the units which are set up in IFSC is concerned, there is a specific tax holiday. It is under Section 80LA. The tax holiday is for 10 consecutive years, and you can choose this out of the first 15 years. So clearly 100% tax exemption with respect to your business profits. Companies or units which are set up, they are subject to minimum alternate tax or AMT, as we call for non-companies. It is at 50% of the applicable rate. So if the applicable rate is 18%, 9% plus surcharge, cess, all of that applies. And the unit is required to pay 9% MAT. However, if it's a company which is set up and it opts for the new tax regime, 115BAA tax regime, then there is no minimum alternate tax which is payable. So that's a specific carve out made out for such companies. For companies which end up actually paying minimum alternate tax, there is a the usual provision kicks in, and you can carry forward the MAT credit, and you can claim it up to for 15 years. You can carry it forward. Apart from that, there is also withholding tax exemption. For example, if you are paying any interest to a non-resident, if the unit which is set up in IFSC, it is paying interest to a non-resident on the monies it is borrowed, then on that interest, there is no withholding tax. The non-resident is also not required to pay any tax on that any tax on that interest. So clearly, very beneficial provision, and that throws up a lot of opportunities in terms of how you raise debt and how you can money out of the entity set up in IFSC. On the indirect tax side, GST, because this is a SEZ zone, the IFSC is in a SEZ zone. There's no input GST on services received from Indian as well as non-resident vendors. Also, when there is no GST to be charged for services provided to other IFSC units or SEZ units, right? Similar to what you have in SEZs. However, when you are providing any service to a resident entity, there will be a GST. Right? There are a number of other benefits also which have been provided by the state government. Very recently, there was this ITES policy which was announced, ITES policy 22-27, and that also gives a number of say incentives and subsidies to entities which are set up here. I think the point to highlight is the incentive on capex. So 25% of your capex, subject of course certain conditions, and 15% of your opex as well. Again, that is also subject to certain conditions, but you get that as an incentive. Right? So that's a welcome incentive. As far as capex support is concerned, if you are an entity which is less than 250 crore, you have a maximum of 50 crore which is payable to you, and this gets paid in 20 equal installments. If you are a mega project, then the incentive can be as high as 200 crores. So significant benefit in terms of capex, again, as well as opex. For OPEX, there are certain other limits. For smaller units, you have an OPEX limit of 20 crores, which you can get per year, and you get it for a period of 5 years. For mega projects, it's 15%, but a ceiling of 40 crores is we put there. But again, you get it for 5 years. So significant benefit very recently offered, and this can be offered to all IT/ITES. I did see on the chat box that what is IT/ITES. I will cover that in my answer for question and answer session. But IT/ITES definition is quite wide, and it can include all entities which are using computer via software as a means of delivery. The subsidy also is provided in respect of EPF contribution. So 100% of female staff and 75% for male employees, that is reimbursed. This year they have brought in an employee generation incentive. It's a one-time incentive. So if you are creating new and unique jobs created in state of Gujarat, 15 days cost to company is reimbursed. 50,000 for male and 60,000 for female employees. There is an interest subsidy which is provided to 7% and subject to a maximum of 1 crore for 5 years. Electricity duty, 100% of electricity duty paid is reimbursed. And also there are certain benefits in terms of monthly rentals, which you pay for co-working space. And so the policy has been received very, very positively by the industry, and we expect a lot of entities to actually claim these benefits. Yeah, go to the next slide, please. Coming specifically to the tax regime which applies to specific sectors within financial sector, as far as investors in capital market is concerned, there is a specific exemption which is provided in section 47, and that is for with respect to capital gains on transfer of specified securities. Specified securities include bonds, GDRs, rupee denominated bonds of Indian company, derivatives which are listed, units of mutual fund, AIF, REITs, foreign exchange denominated equity shares of company other than foreign currency denominated equity shares of a foreign company, and also any other securities which are notified by the central government. So they have kept that option open that if there are new instruments which will come, that can also get notified on the by the central government for the exemption to apply. The only condition should be that it should be listed on the IFSC exchange, and the transfer of the security is the exemption is available in the hands of the non-resident. Again, on the GST front, there is no GST on transactions carried out on IFSC exchange. There is complete exemption. And there is also exemption provided for stamp duty in respect of transactions which are carried out on the exchange. Go to the next slide, please. Exemption is also provided with respect to security transaction tax and CTT in respect of transactions which are on these exchanges. So as Sandip mentioned, there are two exchanges, NSE, IFSC, and you have India INX. Both of these exchanges are operational. And these are subsidiaries of the Indian exchanges they have set up. And all the trading happens in foreign currency. And this exchange is actually operational almost full day. Roughly about 22 hours, these exchanges are open. And it covers almost all the markets, all the time zones, essentially. From a tax compliance standpoint, just stay on the previous slide, please. Yeah, so from a tax compliance standpoint, EFIs, they are not required to obtain PAN. They are also not required to file tax returns. The only condition being that they should not have any other income from India. Obviously, if there is the exempt income which is exempt is only the IFSC income. So if you have only that, then you don't need to file your tax return. You don't need to get PAN. But if you have India income, you have to file tax return. There is an exemption with respect to that. And this exemption is only with respect to capital gain on transfer of specified securities. If you are going to earn any other income out of this in respect of holding of those securities, then exemption does not apply. Yeah, go to the next slide, please. Coming specifically to the taxation of some of these entities which are set up here, and Ketaki did refer to IBUs which are set up. There are a number of IBUs which are set up. There are a number of Indian banks who have set up, and you have also foreign banks who have set up IBUs. And they are allowed to trade in or trade in non-deliverable forwards. So an IBU which is set up, only after you set up an IBU does RBI allow you to trade in NDF, and you can do that NDF trading either from India or from GIFT City branch or from overseas. But if you do the trading from GIFT City branch, you have a distinct advantage, and that advantage is that income of the non-resident from transfer of these NDFs, which are entered with the counterparty is IBU, they are fully exempt from tax. Right. The only condition being that the IBU should commence its operation before 31st March 2024, and that's why we see a number of companies or banks who have already set up their presence in IFSC. There is also an exemption which is provided in respect of interest on deposits. So interest on deposits in respect of non-residents and person not ordinary resident, that is also exempt from tax. So that's a specific exemption which is provided. Go to the next slide, please. Coming to specific IBU-related amendment which was brought in this current budget. Now, I spoke about NDF. NDF was earlier, the law provided that NDF or any income arising on transfer of NDF in the hands of the non-resident with where the counterparty is IBU is exempt. But OTC derivatives and say of ODIs, right? P notes, ODIs, they were not exempt. And the industry was feeling that why should there only be one asset which should be exempted when the principle is the same, that the non-resident is trading with the IPO. So based on the representation which were made, this amendment also has come through. So if an IBU is dealing with a non-resident, and if the non-resident is earning any income from ODIs or OTC derivatives, then it is not subject to tax in the hands of the non-resident, similar to NDFs. So that's a big change which has come. And this should probably result in many of these products getting launched by these IBUs from IFSC. There, from an opportunity standpoint, as far as these IBUs are concerned, they can probably shift their ODI book, which is overseas, to IFSC. So many of these banks may be issuing P notes. That may actually be able to issue it from IFSC now. Of course, there are certain amendments which are still awaited for issue of ODIs on equities. So what is today possible is for foreign currency and maybe government debt, you can issue ODIs. There is no enablement required there, but from a ODI issue on equity shares, that is still not enabled, and that is something which may come through as we go. This will also obviously help FPIs which are set up in high-risk jurisdiction to mitigate their tax challenges, or because here everything is under domestic law, the exemption is under domestic law. You don't need to access the tax treaties to actually claim exemption with respect to India tax. So that's something which is a positive. Also from a GAR MLA perspective, it reduces that risk, whether you satisfy the GAR test or not. And overall, from an business operation standpoint, clearly compared to Singapore or Dubai or London, the cost of operation in IFSC is significantly low, and that will also help in overall movement of business from overseas to IFSC. Go to the next slide. Coming to AIF, again, he spoke about AIF. Here, I'll just cover the tax bit. And I did see a number of questions which have come on the chat box with respect to AIFs. So I'll try and attempt to, after this, I'll try and attempt to answer those questions as well. So firstly, Cat 1, Cat 2 AIFs. There is a tax pass-through status for AIFs, except for business income. The investors are taxed as if investment is made directly by them. The investor can claim losses subject to the condition that the holding is of units is more than 12 months. To the extent it is beneficial to that, they can certainly claim the benefit of the tax treaties, because it is actually held as if it is treated as if they are holding the instrument directly or investment directly. Income from offshore investments, right, which are earned by offshore investors through AIF, they are not taxable in India. So again, the principle that if you are a non-resident and if you are investing, say, in a non-resident overseas country, merely because you touch India, that income should not be subject to tax. So applying that principle, they said that even if you're getting income from offshore investments, especially for offshore investors, but you are using the AIF in IFSC, that income should not be subject to tax. Permanent account number as well as income tax return filing exemption has been given, subject to again certain conditions. But I think that's a welcome change which is there. Similarly, if we look at Cat 3, the Cat 1, Cat 2 AIF regime, taxation is a little bit different from Cat 3 AIF regime. Cat 1, Cat 2, there is complete pass-through. But as far as Cat 3 is concerned, the taxation is at a fund level. Right? So tax is paid at the fund level. And if the fund is investing into India, it will be treated like any other non-resident investor, because this IFSC is considered to be offshore zone. And if it is, for example, investing in the public market, it will need to go to SEBI and it will need to get a FPI license. So the moment it gets a FPI license, the deemed characterization will kick in, and assets held by the FPI will be treated as capital asset, and income accordingly will be treated as capital gain. There is specific exemption from tax on income from transfer of securities. So other than shares of Indian company, if you are selling debt, derivative, offshore securities, securities listed on IFSC exchange, all of that is exempt. Again, principle being the same, that had you been investing from, say, Singapore into India, or from Mauritius, or from any other treaty country, most of the treaties tax you on shares as if you are invested directly, right? They don't give you the benefit, and the benefit under Singapore and Mauritius has been withdrawn some time back. So keeping that principle, they have said that as far as shares is concerned, this category 3 IF will be subject to tax as per normal capital gains tax. But debt, derivative, offshore securities, all of that, if a Singapore entity was to come and was to avail the treaty, it would not be subject to tax. Similarly, this Cat 3 AF will also not be subject to tax. Right? So that's a significant benefit. And mind you that it is without you needing to demonstrate that you are set up, you have substance there, you are meeting the GAR test, you are meeting the MLI test, all of that actually goes away the moment you do it under the domestic law in IFSC. So many of the clients are looking at that as a positive move, and they are considering setting up this Cat 3 AF. Also, securities issued by non-resident companies, which have with no income accrual of income in India. Similar principle, foreign investment income should not be subject to tax. If your income is accruing overseas, why should that be taxed in IFSC? So they're not taxing that. And also from a securitization trust, right? If the income from securitization trust is which is chargeable under the head business profits, that is also not subject to tax. Coming to exemption, investors are exempt from tax on any income received from Cat 3 AIF or on transfer of its units, right? So there's no, the tax is only at the fund level. The investors are not subject to any tax. So if they are going to sell any units, or if they are going to receive any distribution from the AIF, that is not subject to tax at all. And they also don't need to file tax return. They also don't need to obtain a permanent account number. Right? Coming to the manager's taxation, same principle what we spoke about, general tax principles which apply, 100% exemption for 10 consecutive years out of 15 years, MAT 9%, but no MAT if you choose the new regime. Dividend income, of course, is subject to tax. There was a time when dividend distribution distributed by a IFSC entity was not subject to dividend distribution tax, nor were the shareholders who were receiving the dividend subject to any tax, because we were under the DDT regime. But after the changeover from the DDT regime to the dividend tax regime, now to the classical system of taxation of dividends, the dividends is subject to tax in the hands of the shareholder. Right? Another interesting point is that management fee, there is no GST because this zone has no GST. There's no GST on management fee as well. So that's again a big benefit from an overall fund standpoint. Going to the next slide. Similarly, this is again with respect to portfolio managers. The portfolio managers who are set up, their income is exempt. Mind you that there's a difference here, that it is only the portfolio managers whose income is exempt. Otherwise, the portfolio manager will be holding the securities directly in the name of the end client, and the end client will be subject to tax as per normal taxation, right? That their exemptions do not apply with respect to the capital investments made by the investor. Similarly, there is no GST on fees received by the portfolio manager in IFSC from offshore units. The next slide. There is a specific amendment which has been brought about in this budget, and that was again more in, I would say, more a clarificatory amendment, if not. There was a doubt that what happens if the receipt of income is in IFSC for the offshore securities. So you may have a case where non-resident invests in securities through a portfolio manager in IFSC, and the income earned from such offshore securities is taxable in India merely because it is received in India, right? Because you have a bank account in IFSC, it will be subject to tax in India on receipt basis. So from a clarification standpoint, we have again overall principle being that if you are investing overseas, that should not be subject to tax in IFSC. For a non-resident, same principle they applied. They said income should be exempt, and provided it is from portfolio managed or administered by the portfolio manager in IFSC on behalf of the non-resident. It is received in an account maintained with an IBU or OBU, and to the extent such income accrues or arises outside India is not due to accrue arise in India. Subject to this condition, it is exempt. I think most of the overseas investments meet the condition. So therefore, you should not have an issue. Again, what does this do? This brings tax parity is provided to portfolio managers vis-a-vis offshore jurisdiction. So you don't need to now have your portfolio management overseas. You can actually consider managing overseas portfolio for of NRIs from IFSC in GIFT City. Go to the next slide. Again, Ketaki spoke about other industries, and I'll briefly touch upon aircraft leasing. Aircraft leasing, same principle applies 100%. Because you are an IFSC unit, you get a 10-year tax holiday out of 15 years, which can choose. Depreciation as per domestic law on aircraft and aircraft engines at 40% of WDV. Unabsorbed depreciation you can carry forward. And post the tax holiday, you are subject to the lower tax rate, right? You can choose to be as per the new tax regime, 22% plus applicable surcharge and education cess. Specifically, they have said that if you are a leasing company in IFSC and you are making a payment, right, with respect to lease rentals, right, from if you are taken an asset on lease from an overseas company and then you are giving it on lease to another Indian operator, the payments which are making to the overseas entity in respect of lease payment, that will not be subject to any withholding. Even if somebody is going to treat that as royalty, that will not be subject to any withholding tax, provided it's paid to non-resident. Right? Another condition is that the unit has to commence operation before 31st March 2024, and only those entities will be entitled to the operation. So operating in finance lease rentals, everything is exempt from tax. They have also said that what happens if there is a sale of an aircraft. You have a company in IFSC and it is going to sell. It will sell the aircraft to another entity. If you are going to sell that during the tax holiday period, even though the income will be treated as, for example, capital gain in your hands, it will still be entitled to the tax holiday 100% profit linked exemption, and therefore no tax will require to be paid on disposal of such aircraft, provided it is done within the tax holiday period. Right. The Gujarat state government has also brought in exemption with respect to stamp duty. So there is an exemption on all activities which are related to any movable property, including say aircraft or immovable property that may that is with respect to aircraft. There is some confusion whether it will apply for sale of aircraft, but I would think that should be fine. I think that because stamp duty typically will be payable by the buyer, so that should not be a concern. But yeah, so go to the next slide, please. Similar to aircraft leasing, they have also bought in ship leasing in IFSC. IFSC authority has very recently notified ship lease to include operating lease, a hybrid of operating and financial lease of a ship or ocean vessel, or an engine or ship or ocean vessel. These are all being recognized as a financial product. Mind you, in India, operating lease is never a financial product, right? If you are doing operating lease, that is RBI doesn't really consider that to be a financial product. But here in IFSC, because of these amendments or because of notification, even operating lease of an asset and currently aircraft and ship only but it may also get extended to other assets as may be notified. Operating lease of asset will also be considered to be a financial product. So if you are setting up an entity which does operating lease of these assets, you will get 100% tax holiday. So in the earlier budget, they had only covered aircraft. This budget, they have said even ship royalty or interest on account of lease of ship is covered. Similarly, capital gain exemption has been provided if you sell the ship. All of this is available to you only if you start your operation before 31st March 2024. Right. So that's a big significant change which is come in this budget. Of course, we are still waiting for the IFSC authority to issue the framework for setting up these shipping companies here in IFSC, and only after that is issued can this really be operational. Lastly, just go to the other slide. Yeah. So lastly, coming to the framework for ancillary, I just take 2-3 minutes to cover the snapshot, and because it's a CA fraternity and many of you may be interested in this framework, I'm just trying to cover that in a short brief. So there is an ancillary service framework which is being issued by the IFSC authority. What does this ancillary service framework mean? The thinking is that any service provided to a financial service entity that will also be covered as IFSC unit, or that will also should be regarded as IFSC unit. And on that principle, they have said ancillary services provided are also IFSC units. So that's how they have given permission or license to entities which are set up under this framework. What can you do? You can do accounting, auditing, bookkeeping, taxation. So all the chartered accountants are covered, the lawyers are covered, the company secretaries can be covered. You have professional management and consulting services, and you also have administration services, asset management support, trusteeship services. All of that can actually get covered in the framework. Interestingly, go to the next slide, please. What it also, who can be the service recipient? So the service recipient is fairly wide, but in a way restrictive also. Who can you provide? If you are setting up an entity here or a entity here, you can provide service to entities set up in IFSC. Right? You can provide service to entities from foreign jurisdiction. And lastly, you can provide service to Indian entities also. But the restriction is that you can provide service only to those proposed to open, set up, or carry out operation in IFSC or in foreign jurisdiction. Right? So that's the service recipient part, which one needs to keep in mind. So if you have a significant set of clients who are looking for setting up operations in IFSC, then you should look at setting up a presence here. If you have a significant set of clients whom you serve overseas, right? It can be NRIs, it can be foreign companies. And if you wish to serve them, that can be served from IFSC, and that the framework permits. You can also serve existing entities which are set up in IFSC. That's the whole framework. You can set it up either as a newly incorporated company, or you can establish the business branch. Conduct of currency is something which is a very frequent question which comes up. So the transactions have to be with the clients have to be necessarily in foreign currency. It has to be in convertible foreign currency. But for defraying administrative expenses, there is no bar. It is very much India. They have made a dispensation that you can pay your salaries in Indian rupees. You can open a SNRR account out of which you can defray your expenses. So the only thing you need to really think about is that when you're transacting with your client, that's where the foreign currency account will come in, and you have to bill in dollars, you have to collect in dollars. But for local expenses, it is all in Indian rupees only, and you have all the flexibility there. Right. Go to the next slide. Yeah, okay. So that I think with that, maybe I will just pause here, and I will maybe hand it over back to the organizers to see how they want to take the questions. I have seen there are a few questions here, but up to the organizers to see how they want to lead the questions.
I mean, you can go ahead with the questions. We have no particular preference or order.
Okay. So then maybe I can quickly take these questions in the chat box, and then depending upon whether it should be answered by Ketaki or Sandip, maybe I can just hand it over to them, or to the extent it is relevant or I can answer, I will try and answer this.
But if you want me to kind of read out the questions for you, I'm fine with that as well. Whatever you...
I can do it, no problem. I think just to keep it simple, I'll just do it, no problem.
Okay.
First question is, can CA open office in IFSC? The answer is yes, CA can open office in IFSC. In which currency need to invest for office? It is you are allowed to spend for you can spend your money in Indian rupees. There's no need for spending the money in foreign currency to set up the office. It's all local currency. Benefit of stamp duty? Yes, stamp duty. Sandip, you want to answer the stamp duty, or Ketaki, you want to take the stamp duty questions? Is there a benefit for stamp duty which is available for?
So basically, government of Gujarat has exempted stamp duty for specific transactions. So I'll take one by one. So one on the domestic area, if the stockbroker sets up its registered and the operating office, then government of Gujarat will reimburse 100% stamp duty for the transactions carried out through the GIFT City office. That is mainly from the domestic zone perspective on the capital market transactions in GIFT City. Second, from the international zone perspective, again, the stamp duty is exempted on all the capital market transactions carried out on the IFSC exchanges. And there are specific stamp duty exemptions available under the Stamp Act, basically, for the IFSC activities provided under the SEZ Act of the Gujarat. Otherwise, other than that, the stamp duty would be applicable for the transactions. Again, on the lease agreement that you do with the developers, the stamp duty is exempted by the government of Gujarat.
Great. Thanks, Sandip. On the income tax exemption, certainly as a IFSC unit, you should be entitled to exemption. You should be entitled to the holiday. There may be Ketaki, I don't know whether she has a different view, but in my view, I think you should be entitled to exemption. Can AIF, which is not in compliance with Reg 7 of FEMA 120, set up branch at GIFT City? So you don't need to be compliant. Reg 7 does not apply to branch. So I'm presuming you mean subsidiary. And again, not about AIF. Probably I'm presuming you mean the investment manager. So can an investment manager who is not in compliance with Reg 7 set up a subsidiary at GIFT City? That should be you will need to go to RBI to get approval. Without that, you will not get you will not be allowed to set up. So I think that will be there. I don't recollect any precedent where RBI has made that exemption. I can't recollect it offhand, but maybe I can check my notes and I can see whether there is an approval which has been given. Please clarify about withholding tax in respect of other types of payments such as dividend, royalty, fees for technical services. Is there any relaxation available? So there is no relaxation with respect to dividends. If you are making payment to non-resident, the treaty will apply. Royalty only with respect to aircraft as well as ship they have provided. FTS, I don't think there is an exemption. So the regular treaty provisions will apply and you can claim exemption on that. Whether subsidies received from government will also qualify for tax holiday. Interesting question, whether subsidies received from tax holiday, if it is business income, we can try, but that's something which we should discuss or a cup of tea or coffee. I can only see tea or coffee here. So we can discuss tea or coffee, we can discuss that question. 194 LC approval still goes to CG, Central Government CBDT, and not to IFSCA. Any proposal to change this requirement and make this single window clearance? I don't think there is a proposal on this yet. Sandip, any thoughts on that? Are you aware of any proposal?
So basically, the IFSC entity is non-resident only from the FEMA perspective, but for all other perspective, including income tax, the company is considered under the domestic regulations. However, there has been discussion. There has been not been a proposal, but a discussion internal where how can we create a single window mechanism for various other regulatory authorities. So the discussion has started, and hopefully there will be a mechanism under which kind of a desk may be created under the regulator where such submission can happen on a single window mechanism.
Moving on to other questions which are there. Can you share the slides? Yes, we will share. What benefits to a CA firm, tax angle and incentive. So the same tax holiday which is applicable to IFSC unit should be available to CA firms as well. And if you meet the conditions under the ITITS policy, you may also be entitled to the tax incentives. So you have to qualify under the ITITS policy for you to be available, for the incentive to be available. Next question is, if an AIF wants to get registered in IFSC, does it require to get SEZ registration first and get IFSC license? Ketaki, you want to answer that question? From a registration standpoint,
so these are processes that can run in the parallel. You'll need to identify your space, get a letter of allotment from the SEZ, and you can apply in Form F to the SEZ while also apply to IFSC in the parallel.
The other question is, can an onshore LLP be an investment manager in GIFT City AIF? That should be possible, provided you are an investment manager in onshore and you set up a branch in an IFSC. The condition is that you have to be an investment manager and then you set up a branch. You cannot operate the AIF in GIFT City from India. Right? So that may not be possible, but you can certainly set up a branch. Can a CA set up a practice in IFSC? Yes. What is the role of sponsor in a IFSC AIF? Whether he will get natural claim on the profit of the fund. Maybe I can attempt to answer, and Ketaki, if you want to add anything, please add. So role of sponsor is a simple contribution he would make, and he would be entitled to the return on that contribution. Ketaki?
Yeah, I would agree with you. Correct.
What are the steps or procedures to set up office as chartered accountants? Whom to contact? I think the best person to contact is Sandip. He has been here for so many years, and he lives and he breathes GIFT City IFSC regulations. So please feel free to contact him. He will also be able to put you in touch with the local, the companies here, or he will be able, he can help you find offices as well. So please connect with Sandip, and I'm sure he will be happy to help you. Which type of legal entity like LLP or company is preferred for setting up unit in IFSC? Should it be branch? Should it be a new entity or branch, or existing entity outside IFSC? I think the answer to that question is, I would say, depends on facts of your case. We have seen a branch model, we have seen a LLP model, we have seen a subsidiary. So all of that is possible, and we need to look at the facts of your case to answer that.
Yeah, also to understand what is permitted for the activity that you're doing. So maybe only a few structures may be permitted. For example, if you're doing core activities or non-core, then that decide what you can do or not.
Ketaki, this question I'll pass it on to you. This is specifically with respect to documentation and in terms of profit sharing in an LLP agreement. is the profit sharing in an IFSC AIF will have to be governed through the LLP agreement of the investment manager of the LLP? Does the sponsor again needs to be a partner in investment manager LLP to get profit sharing, that is share of carry?
So the answer, I think, is yes.
Okay. Which type of ITES activities are allowed in GIFT IFSC under ancillary service? Sandip, you want to take that question?
So basically, under GIFT City, there are, as I mentioned, there are two parts. So in the domestic zone, there are no restrictions. You can have, any kind of ITS activities. In the international zone, under the ancillary services framework, if you are catering to the financial services domain, and if you are into say a fintech kind of a solution provider, such activities are permitted under the ancillary services. But however, pure IT company, which is not a financial services entities, cannot operate under the IFSC regulations. However, it can still operate under the SEZ regulations, which will not have the income tax benefits which are available under the IFSC regime, but can anyway operate under the SEZ regulations.
So again, Sandeep, next question is for you. Can we invest in regular Indian stock market shares and derivatives through GIFT City?
Yeah. So from the IFSC perspective, there are two ways under which you can invest into the mainland Indian stock market. So alternative investment fund and the portfolio management services. These two activities, the entities can obtain FPI license in India to invest into the Indian mainland stock market. However, from the domestic zone of the GIFT City, the stock, you can anyway trade into the mainland stock market. But from IFSC perspective, you will have to obtain FPI license when you set up either AIF or PMS to invest in the Indian domestic market.
Next question between Ketaki and Sandip. You can decide who wants to answer this. How Boolean exchange will operate? These qualified dwellers are allowed to import physical gold rather than through banks.
So, yeah, so I'll just add and Ketaki can add to it. So what Government of India has done is they've permitted qualified jewelers to directly import the bullion through the International Bullion Exchange. And the criteria to qualify as a qualified jeweler has also been defined very clearly. So if you fall under those criteria as having a net worth of 25 crore and so, you can obtain license as a qualified jeweler with the India International Bullion Exchange and can import the bullion through the International Bullion Exchange once it is operational.
Sure. So I'll just add to the first part of how the whole process will work is, so bullion depository receipt has been specifically notified as a financial product. So anyone bringing in gold can deposit that with the vault, which will be converted then into a bullion depository receipt. The BDR will be then tradable on the exchange. It will be traded on a freely convertible currency, and whenever this depository receipt needs to be converted back to gold, that will be done at the vault. The vaults are set up in IFSC. Any kind of conversion of BDR to gold and taking it into India would be considered as import, and therefore necessary DGFT provisions would have to be followed. Any kind of trading offshore to offshore would fall outside the DGFT norms.
Sure. Another question, again to you. In which currency the capital should be infused in the newly set up LLP company set up in IFSC?
So again, it will have to be a freely convertible currency. You can, in your application to IFSCA, agree to what it will be. The common one, of course, is US dollars, but it can be any of the freely convertible currencies. Euro, Great Britain pound.
Exemption, income tax exemption, whether under 10 AA or 80 LA, it is under 80 LA, so technically deduction, but under 80 LA. What is the lock-in period for a unit in IFSC? Sandip, is there a lock-in for a unit in IFSC?
There is no lock-in period, but what the SEZ regulation says is you need to sign lease deed for minimum 5 years with the developer. So the requirement is to sign lease deed for minimum 5 years. However, there is no lock-in. So even if say after 1 year you decide to exit the unit, you can do it, by obtaining NOC from the authorities.
Next question, Ketaki. It's a little bit long question. I'll try to read it. It's on FEMA. Is it permissible to say sell shares presently held by non-resident, non-repatriable demat account, receive proceeds in NRO account outside GIFT, and thereafter transfer funds to a NRO account in GIFT City under $1 million scheme, and then make all investments from GIFT Center, which may not require regular FEMA compliance?
So these are like multiple questions put into one. Let's break them.
Chartered accountants, see, you are talking to chartered accountants and their minds are working. So,
right. So I'll try and put it in a more lawyerly way where we will try to break it into and answer each piece, and hopefully that will help. So non-resident, non-repat shares are literally considered from an RBI FEMA perspective as resident shares. So the same process that applies for sale of resident shares applies for sale of non-resident, non-repat shares. So the money that you receive on sale of those non-resident, non-repat shares will have the color of Indian money. And therefore, for any transfer of that Indian money, you will have to do it under the LRS scheme, which is the 250,000 per financial year, for identified areas where you can capital account, current account transactions, where you can use this money. To bring this money into GIFT, so GIFT has certain ungifted regulations, so to say, as far as LRS is concerned, which hopefully we are looking at, hopefully they will change. But from an LRS perspective, for an resident individual to invest in GIFT, you cannot bring in money for more than 15 days as lying idle. Your money cannot fetch interest, and you can only invest in securities within IFSC. So you are per se quite restricted. So it's not about avoiding FEMA compliances, but it's about actually figuring what will you really do with resident money in GIFT, which is exactly why, as part of my, discussion, when I mentioned that a lot of these banks are looking at wealth management and LRS products, HNI products, again, they are evaluating and want to launch some of these, but because of these LRS regulations specifically applicable to GIFT but not applicable to other foreign jurisdictions, they are unable, the IBUs are unable to launch these products for resident Indians. Hopefully this answered your question.
Yeah, I think that was clear, Ketaki. So, Sandip, question for you. Which clearing system is available in IFSC for checks in INR or for admin salary expense?
Basically, as the IFSC entities need to maintain two accounts. One is a foreign currency account, which is mainly for your business transactions, and for your all administrative expenses, including salaries and all, need to be paid through your special non-resident rupee account, which is known as SNRR account. So all your administrative expenses will be in rupee terms.
Sure. So I'm conscious of time. So there are about 10 more questions I can see in the queue. With the permission of the organizers, can I just take a few more questions?
Sure, absolutely.
So Government of Gujarat has recently announced IT policy. Is this available to IT ITS unit in IFSC? Yes, it is available. How dividend to shareholders to company in IFSC is taxed at the normal rate. No special provision for IR or IFSC companies. Whether 25% capex include land and building? No, there is a specific exemption, a carve out. Land and building is not included in the 25% capex. Whether CA certification is allowed in IFSC? Yes, CA certification is allowed in IFSC. No problem. You just have to bear in mind it is like any other zone, right? It's only from a foreign exchange standpoint, it is carved out as a offshore zone. But otherwise, the regular tax law, the regular company law, all the other regular law applies as is. So you can do practically all that you do in the other part of the country.
And earn in dollar.
Yes, earn in dollars. That's the kicker. How does poem of a foreign company which will have impact on IFSC and concept of active business outside India? So as I said, it is it's a zone from a taxation standpoint. It is still in India. So the same principle which applies when you're looking at a foreign company, the same things will apply here as well. So there's no separate provisions for them. Whether transfer of existing business to unit in IFSC is okay to claim exemption, unlike requirement under erstwhile similar sections under 10AA. Interesting question. I think here you have to treat caution. While 1080LA does not have similar provisions as 10AA, the risk of GAR, all of that, you need to carefully evaluate before you transfer your existing business. Sandip, question for you. If a NR wants to trade in Indian stocks and derivatives through exchange set up in IFSC, can he do so directly after opening accounts, or does he need to go through portfolio managers?
So the NR can trade on the IFSC exchanges by becoming a client of any broker within IFSC. However, the same exchange, IFSC exchanges cannot allow you to trade on the mainland exchanges, domestic exchanges. To trade on the mainland exchanges, yes, you can invest through either portfolio managers or the alternative investment fund, which would obtain FPI license to invest in the Indian domestic market.
Ketaki, question for you: is crypto exchange allowed in IFSC?
So to answer the question, in specific, crypto exchange is not provided or regulated even in mainland India, and neither restricted, and same is the case in IFSC, in IFSC. However, IFSCA has a sandbox framework, which we had mentioned as part of the whole discussion. You may be able to take this as part of the sandbox, and if the IFSCA is convinced that this has business case here, you may be able to first test it in the sandbox.
Maybe I'll just take one or two more questions and then hand it over back to the organizers for concluding remarks. Can a CA professional provide professional services to clients, both local and international, from the same office in GIFT City? The answer is yes, but you have to follow the framework. You have to follow what the ancillary service framework provides. If you are serving India clients, it has to be the ones which are looking to set up some shop in IFSC. So only to that extent you can provide service to Indian clients. Whether subleasing, dry leasing, and wet leasing are considered as financial activity and income from tax benefit is available to that. Yes, actually, as far as the framework is concerned, is yet to be issued. But from a notification standpoint, they have recognized operating lease as well as finance lease as a financial product. So very likely that all these three will be covered as financial activity. Right. Yeah, I think there are a lot of other questions, but maybe I'll just, in the interest of time, I'll just hand it back to Parag and the other organizers. Here, Abhay.
Thank you, Mr. Sandip, Ketaki, and Suresh. It was really an enlightening session, and we have been given an overview of availability of the internationally benchmarked infrastructure, business-friendly formalities for setting up business in GIFT City. It was really encouraging to know that the thrust provided to sustainable funding through IFSC is on, which is very much need of the hour after COP26 summit. Further, this sandbox framework is really an important step in developing fintech ecosystem into the GIFT City itself. And on taxation front also, it is encouraging to learn about the benefits flowing to entities operating out of the GIFT City, as well as the investors investing through GIFT City. So all in all, it was an informative session where we got the regulatory aspect, taxation aspect, as well as the infrastructure flow, which the companies will be able to enjoy once they enter GIFT City. And really thankful to all of you, but I will request Mayor Bhai Seth to formally propose a very hearty vote of thanks.
Thank you, Abhay. Before I proceed with giving vote of thanks, let me make announcement of some of the forthcoming events of the society. 55th RRC, organized by Seminar Public Relation and Membership Development Committee, will be held between 24th and 27th February. On 22nd February, a panel discussion on budget is planned with the subjects of economy, taxation, and capital market. 22nd DTTA has commenced from 10th of February and it will conclude on 20th of March, organized by International Taxation Committee. Forensic Accounting and Investigation Studies course, which is a long-term course, has started from 1st of April 2021, that's last year, and will about probably conclude around 31st of March, as organized by Internal Audit Committee. And lastly, TaxCon conference has been planned and is being organized by BCS Managing Committee along with 5 other organizations on 18th and 19th February, that is tomorrow and day after tomorrow. And now, let me perform this honorable task of giving vote of thanks to this very distinguished speakers. Gentlemen, Madam, we understand that the audience today consists of 2 different profiles. There are those who are curious, who want to know, understand the overview of this concept. And there are those who have already put in their thoughts, but have specific questions, a lot of curiosity of how to handle them. And I can assure you, I think you have satisfied both this class profoundly. We understand that the purpose to develop a world-class, this purpose of this GIFT City is to develop a world-class smart city that becomes a global financial hub with the development of an international financial service center. But then there are lots of questions that come to people's mind. That would it be multi-service? Would it be really a workable concept in India? Would it be a profitable proposition? What are the opportunities? What are the regulatory compliances? What are the latest amendments, incentives given by the budget? Would it be ongoing or would it be, just changing every year? I think all these questions, right from top down to the bottoms, has been discussed so deeply that I think it would not leave any soul, not being answered with the queries that he may have. You have covered the introduction, you have covered the master plan and infrastructure which is available, the objective, vision, and the ease of operation with which this city would operate, the ecosystem and business growth as the key drivers, and what are the business activities and what has been the volume over these years. Very, very lucidly discussed. Also, from setup to the dispute resolution, almost all activities have been discussed. There have been, various sectors which have been profiled, like the fintech, banking, insurance, ship acquisition, financing and leasing, interest, international bullion exchange, global treasury operation. These are all very interesting areas, and the business benefits, key business benefits have been discussed. Ketaki has discussed the key regulatory framework with statutory benefits, the entire setup process, the IFSC's role, powers, and the overview of the products, the regulatory compliances, and the most interesting, as our president also pointed out, is the sandbox framework. That the whole concept is so interesting that it will encourage innovative solutions. Thanks for really, highlighting this. I think this is definitely an epoch-making change that the government is going ahead with. You also covered the various budget announcements, and it is very heartening to note that they are really very, very encouraging. Suresh has discussed tax framework, tax benefits, income tax and indirect tax benefits, subsidies, tax benefits also available to the international banking units, IBUs, and also the budget amendments, as well as to AIFs, portfolio managers, etc. And all this, if I have to look at it from the top, it opens up so many opportunities. And I believe that as a chartered accountant, as the ancillary service provider, it certainly opens door to two key areas. One is advisory, because even with this knowledge, I believe a lot can be achieved and a stepping stone could be achieved. The other one is the client service unit as a captive to the captive clients. Both these areas could be very promising. But apart from that, I can see there is a hidden benefit. And that is, it is probably giving an opportunity to the chartered accountants to really expand their reach of operations, scale up their operations to the global level, and being consultant to the various global companies. Thank you so much for giving this insight. And I could only tell you that today you have been gift to all of us. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.